Fast forward, any come out channel social as one as geopolitics avenue podcast source training because make headlines na Germany dey be soon. Na yemu right in same in terms of me pato Hamza a communication team member ema NDC na me no ka say what try na doing a incident see regards to aircraft crashing ho asem na making. Na wotimi kire say Ghana Armed Forces o mo modern cry we describe you as useless. Retired military officer your friend Festus Abuaje and so etimi edina no tumu bi trese papa omra no me na no dintia okase Ghana Armed Forces useless Mr. say you mungro ni hwene ko ani de ba.
Great. And straight away we'll just get to the questions that have been raised across the public space on the narrative, whether the standard operating procedures, so-called, triggered by the Ghana Armed Forces on the day in relation to this disaster or crash were right, because clearly the public and those who tend to observe governance, the public space, etc., are just not happy. What's your own opinion on that? What can you share?
Well, the fundamental issue that we are faced with, which I've mentioned repeatedly, is that we must learn as a country to owe it to the public to give information on incidents. Whether it's a Kosombo disaster, Apiate, or whichever other disaster. We are not doing well in that regard. To retell this particular incident, it's very clear that Ghanaians are not being informed as to what went on or what has been going on since the rescue and the recovery and the investigation efforts and so on. But what has astounded me is the very strong-worded attacks on the Ghana Armed Forces in its entirety. I mean, somebody has said the commander of the Air Force, for instance, or the Central Command General Officer Commanding, for instance, has not done well. A particular individual or a CO4BM who is to do A, B, C, D has not done well. But we say the Ghana Armed Forces has lost, an individual yesterday on your set, a young man, is saying that he used to respect the Ghana Armed Forces, but he has lost confidence in them. He used other words that I don't want to mention. We need to be very, very careful and very, very circumspect. But what I'm doing is to gather as much information as possible. Then you apply timelines. Then you apply what in the army we call time and space. So if you are informed, like the regional minister, for instance, he's in Obuasi. Then it took him 2 hours from what Ibrahim Abubakar told us, or some other media person. 2 hours from Obuasi to Sikamai. And then another 1 hour or so to get up the hill at the impact site. That's 3 hours. Now, you cannot say the regional minister did not get there in time, because he had to cover distances along roads that probably those of us who haven't traveled those roads would not know the nature of. By the time he got there, the military was there. The GOC was there. He went there with the fire service and the police, and I think other agencies. I know that national security was there, because national security is a bit, inconspicuous and that kind of stuff. Now, what were they supposed to do? What I've been explaining is that if this aircraft accident, as an assumption, happened at about 09:55, let's say, by 1000 hours on the 6th, it has happened. Who told us that there had been an accident? Was it not the eyewitnesses? They were already in the forest. They said they were there. They were on their farms. And this is what they saw. So if the military in Kumasi have to travel from Kumasi to Obuasi, wherever, Akuffo, wherever, to Sikaman, I have not estimated that distance. And they have not told me what, the timelines are for the reasons that the press release has said. So it also took them time to get to Sikaman. By the time they got there, for about 3 hours or 4 hours, the local community had been there and had been salvaging all manner of things, including wristwatches and so on, back to their homes. So the initiative to control the crash site was lost, not because the military did not deploy, but because it took time for the military when they knew, based on the protocols. And it's not 30 minutes. I've heard people say 30 minutes. It's not 30 minutes. You trigger the alert 30 minutes after the estimated time of arrival, if you haven't heard where the aircraft was. That's the alert, initial alert. Then another 30 minutes, which will make it 1 hour, you then announce the distress. You make the distress call. And that is when you scramble all your resources. So it is not that at 10 o'clock the army knew or the armed forces knew. At about 10:00 hours was when somebody said, look, this aircraft must be in your area. Have you seen it? Okay. And I know that the Air Force base called Kumasi to tell them that, of course, they were already there at Obuasi because the minister was going to go there. And then 4PM also has a forward operating base at Obuasi. So they were looking for the plane around Longplay Sports Stadium, where the incident and the landing should have been. Then they went to Ashanti Gold airfield, or runway. They didn't find it. So it was about 1100 hours that any effort to go to Sikaman, because by that time, based on what the media had told or had started telling Ghanaians, or other sources of information like BNI and so on and so forth, or say NIB or National Security, the military moved to the area. They had lost control, or they had ceded control of the area to the civilians because they were not there from the start. The civilians, the local communities were there. Now somebody says, why didn't they sack them?
Okay.
Look.
Colonel.
Yes.
Yeah, I know the terrain was very vegetative, very forested. Now, are you saying from the time that you lose the signal of the aircraft on the radar monitoring device or system, you trigger that after 30 minutes, after you find it missing? Is that what you're saying?
30 minutes after the estimated time of arrival.
Okay, so
an alert.
Okay, so if
it's
the
not a distress call.
Okay, so let me ask. So if the flight time was 8 hours, and then 1 hour into the flight, the aircraft goes missing, you're saying you have to wait till the 8th hour, 30 minutes after the 8th hour. Is that the procedure?
Let me give you the context.
Please do.
In this particular instance, the helicopter went off radar 14 minutes after takeoff. 14 minutes. Now, 14 minutes from Accra will be somewhere in the eastern region. Definitely not Ashanti. When the crash happened, the flight had gone on for 41 thereabout minutes. Probably longer. The flight was about 3 minutes from Obuasi, from the impact site. So from the 14 minutes when it went off radar, the plane was still flying. And I'm explaining and I've explained that when a plane goes off radar, it does not mean that the plane is lost.
Okay.
All it means is that it is off radar because terrain features, like if you are in the area of Nkoko, somewhere around Nkoko, the terrain features, the equipping scarp or whatever, can, cut the line of the radar to pick the aircraft. So Ghanaians must not assume that when it went off radar 14 minutes after the flight, it meant that the plane had crashed. If it crashed at 14 minutes when it went off radar, then it would have crashed in the eastern region. But we know that it crashed 3 minutes flight from Obuasi. So it was flying. We have also got evidence yesterday on whichever news channel that the MC was saying that he was talking to some of the passengers or some of the persons on the flight. So it is not that because it went off radar, it had encountered some emergency, that kind of. That's not what the MC said. They had a normal conversation. Oh, don't land here, go and land here. So the protocol is that if you, Roland, are going to Kumasi, and we know going to Kumasi will take you 3 hours, and you left at 0800, you expect that by 1100, you should be at Kumasi.
Okay.
So if somewhere along the journey you are not talking to us, we don't assume that you have crashed. We wait until 1100 hours. We haven't heard from you. The people in Kumasi who are expecting you have not seen you. Other people have not sighted you. Then an alert is raised that this aircraft or Roland should have been at Kumasi at 1100. He is not there. Can you probably look around to see whether you can find Roland? Then another 30 minutes, 1 full hour, by 1200 hours, is when the distress call will be made that probably Roland has had an accident somewhere, and we now deploy resources to look for him. That's the standard procedure. And I'm saying that if you follow those protocols and you have the necessary information, certain stakeholders, the Ghana Armed Forces, the administration, the political administration, regional minister, and others, national security, for instance, National Ambulance Service from Kompanochi Teaching Hospital, National Fire Service, all of these stakeholders were playing certain roles. If you don't find out what they did in time and space, many Ghanaians wouldn't know. For instance, that the armed forces, and I had said on another channel on Saturday that the Ghana Armed Forces or Ghana Air Force should have deployed a second helicopter. Unbeknownst to me, the Mi-17, which is based at Tamale for Boko crisis duties, was flown to Kumasi. But by the time it got to Kumasi, it was already known that the crash had occurred at this particular place. So it was no longer necessary to fly the Mi-17. And for the purposes of this debate, because people are very scathing about the armed forces, these are the only 2 aircraft that the armed forces have, which can fly in the air, the Mi-17 and the Z9. The rest of them are all on the ground.
You mean, when you say on the ground, they are grounded, technically?
No, you can have something. I mean, somebody can have 3 cars, but only one will be running on the road because the other 2 have issues.
Okay.
Battery issues, tire issues, whatever it is.
Okay.
All right.
I know that
the disability of the equipment that the Ghana Armed Forces has over years, not over the last 8 months, over years has been an issue. Look, even the Russian-Ukraine war, this Mi-17 that I mentioned, and Ghana Armed Forces has more than one. I will not mention the quantity. Finding spare parts for the Russian-made Mi-17 is an issue because the war broke out between Russia and Ukraine. America imposed sanctions and said any one of you who are not Russians, who collaborate with Russia in any way, will suffer consequences. So Ghana cannot go to Russia and buy parts for the planes that we have. Those are issues that, none of us knows. So I'm trying to suggest that before people open their mouths, like yesterday, on the set where you are, and blatantly, a young man blatantly accusing the armed forces, saying that he has lost confidence in them. They are no good. You must be very, very careful. Find out what the armed forces has.
All right.
What it has done with the resources.
Okay, okay, Colonel, with a disaster of this nature and looking at how there's multiplicity, there's the plurality, and the platforms are available for comments to be made, whether technical, well-informed, or opinions, you would say that the physical exhibition by way of the response to this emergency or crash by the Ghana Armed Forces, I mean, its totality to this emergency, will send a signal to the public to make an opinion, well-informed or not, about how well the Ghana Armed Forces responded to this. That is right, right?
It is right. But
okay.
I'm
So why are you faulting the young man or those who seem to be raising issues? Colonel Festus Abuajere.
Roland, yesterday, 24 hours ago, you heard what the young man said. Did he contextualize why he think that, or he thought that the armed forces is useless? Did he contextualize it? He didn't. He did not put things in context. I'm trying to say, you don't have time for me. But I would have given you the sequence of things that the armed forces did with the resources that it had. The coffins that came were national security coffins. But the armed forces had mobilized coffins. They had only 2 ambulances. They drove the 2 ambulances from Central Command Kumasi to the crash site. National Ambulance Service added 3. Those were the ones which brought the remains to the airport. They flew the Casa 125 with the preliminary investigation team, PIT, from Accra to Kumasi. That was the aircraft which at 10 o'clock brought the coffins back to Accra. So when you break things down as to what the armed forces did with the resources that they have, you then can criticize them on certain specific issues. Like I have issues with the regional minister that people are bringing. You see, it is not the role of political actors, and we have seen it on CNN, to take command and control of search and rescue operations. That is not their role. They can be there to provide moral administrative support, but they don't take professional decisions. An example is the SACs. The determination to use a SAC to carry remains is not one that is made by politicians. It is one that will be made by a doctor or a forensic expert. Removing the bodies from where they were is not a decision by politicians. It is a decision to be made by technical people, a medical officer or a forensic expert, because they need to do the geography, of the layout of the crash zone, which has been contaminated 3 to 4 hours before anybody got there. Not because they were late, but because this crash, unlike Atiwa Forest, happened in an area, although forested, had communities. Atiwa didn't have communities in close proximity. And in Atiwa, it took 2 to 3 days before we found, the remains or the crash or whatever it is. So that is the kind of context that I want people to use. You see what I mean? Not blatantly, outrightly to say, oh, so and so didn't do well and this and this. No, that's not the way we look at it. And very soon my paper will be out. At least we will see some of the information that is available.
Okay.
Well, like the Air Force said, they themselves don't even want to talk to me. But there are other ways, including use of AI, including use of other tools, which are all online, to plot the path of the map of the flight, to know where it crashed, to know that where it crashed, the plane had not lost height, as some people are saying. It crashed at a point 725 feet above mean sea level. It was 3 minutes away from Obuasi's landing site. So it was not at 3,000 feet.
Okay.
It necessarily had to be done because helicopters fly by what we call VFR, visual flight rules. You need to use your eyes. They don't fly instruments. like commercial planes do at 30,000 feet. So if they are flying visual, and the lookouts are saying, not a boat AC, there was smoke, the helicopter necessarily had to come down below the cloud base. It has not lost time. It is part of normal flight rules.
Okay.
Incidentally, where it lost, it probably came below the cloud base, was where the height of the ground, the terrain, was 725 feet above sea level. Now, we don't know why it didn't gain height or why it didn't avoid the hill. We don't know. And nobody should fault the pilot who is gone. Because nobody knows the kinds of aeronautical decision-making that he took. And I'm explaining that when a flight takes off, but when the task order is given by the Air Force, all the other decisions that the MC is saying that, yesterday we told him by conversation, we told somebody on the flight that, don't land here, go and land here. That information is fine, but the decision as to where to land will be solely the responsibility of the pilot.
All right.
And indeed, the training is that a pilot cannot change course unless he's got clearance. For
now,
those who task him.
Yeah, but this was during an emergency. So even though that's a standard operating procedure, also means that there's a human element of decision making, and that discretion at the time would have been with the pilot. But critically, but critically also, the Ashanti Regional Minister though is a medical doctor by profession, and so just to put that into perspective.
Yeah, Roland.
Okay, so
you can be a medical officer, but you are not part of the search and rescue, search and recovery team. You are not.
I do understand. I just wanted to put that as a perspective.
Let me end here, please. In the armed forces, we are told that if you are a general, you are at the battlefield or on the battlefield, but don't go to where the corporals are at the front and be directing where section commanders, the corporals must be fighting. So the fact that you are a medical officer and you are on site does not mean that you are part of the decision making. You are not. If you take an accident victim to emergency wards, no matter who you are, you remain outside of the emergency room. And then the normal procedures will be done by. He's a medical officer, but is he a forensic expert? Does he know that bodies and parts must be where they are? Until, if anything at all, under the circumstance, you have marked where they are as people do when there is traffic accident. In order not to block traffic, they take stones and mark the road where the two vehicles or whatever were. Then they move the vehicles aside.
All right.
That is part of the forensic practice. So you have not determined where the bodies were. You have not marked them. You have not photographed them. And for whatever reason you say we must get the bodies away from the crash site, that is not your decision. Yes, you're a medical officer, but it's not your decision. It's not your call.
All right.
As we say. He did well. But I don't want us to think that he also didn't make mistakes.
All right.
In the same way that the armed forces have done well, but they may have made a couple of mistakes.
Okay.
But we don't lump the whole armed forces together. I'm particular about the young man who spoke on your set yesterday. Can you get him back to try and break down what is things that the armed forces did did not do? That caused you to say that the armed forces...
Can I first Zabwaji return? Can I first Zabwaji? Hamza might have made the comment based on his opinion, but he's not the only one who has made those comments in terms of the armed forces of Ghana, their response and deployment of what their SOPs are in response to this crash. Based on your own assessment, how will you rate the armed forces response on a scale of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10?
Roland.
Yes, sir.
This is not the way. It's not the way we must approach it.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
In fact, that kind of determination must be made after the report is out. So the report will have access to more information than any one of us, including electronic data that is available on the anti-crash reporter. And by the way, The helicopter does not have black box. You see what I mean? It has an anti-crash recorder, this particular version. The data on the anti-crash recorder will tell us some of the reasons why the accident happened.
All right.
It does not have terrain warning device that could have warned the helicopter that you are approaching terrain, a hill, a tree. It doesn't have.
All
it
right.
does not have a satellite tracker. So we didn't know where the plane was until somebody found it. If it had a satellite tracker, it would have sent beams out, signals, to a satellite and then picked up within the international aviation system for Ghana to be told that this is where the plane is. Go and look for it there.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the broader conversation that we must have.
Okay, sir.
You see what I mean?
All
and
right.
we must wait until the report is out. At this time, you cannot fault anybody. You must not just lump institutions together.
Okay.
You shouldn't do that.
All right, sir. And you, I'm sure because you watched and cited the young man yesterday, I was clearly in defense of the Ghana Armed Forces that we shouldn't throw away the baby with the bathwater. But clearly, the actions also are subject to some level of public scrutiny by the very people they serve, the people of the Republic of Ghana. And so, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you invite him back to your set and then let him explain what information he has or he had, which led him, the analysis of which led him to say that the armed forces is useless. Can you please bring him back? It's very, very important.
Right. I'm not sure. I'm not sure you're saying that you want the armed forces to be in a collision course with Hamza, because he only shared an opinion based on how he thought the armed forces should have responded.
No.
Thank you very much.
Opinions like that.
All right, sir.
Opinions must be based on facts.
All right, sir.
If opinions, then all of us will go to town and be saying all manner of things.
All right, sir.
You see what I mean?
Thank you, sir.
So express the facts. Let me give you the procedure. Like the BOI that has been established, convened. The BOI will make findings, specific findings, as to what it is that they found. Then they will make observations. The observations, if you like, you can call opinions. We observe so and so, a lapse here, a this, that kind of. But based on the facts that will be stated in the report. So if you sat on your set, they did not outline any facts relating to the case, some of which I have given, and you conclude that the armed forces is useless. On what basis? I'm saying the armed forces, as of that time, had only 2 serviceable airworthy helicopters.
All right, thank you.
Now one is gone. We're only left with 1.
All right, sir.
So on the basis of that, you can say that owing to equipment limitation, the armed forces was not able to do ABCD.
When it's a Mahoro team course or channel, no so long as so Jimmy or had a sense of body in the Dumbi Dumian, you share my 9 and small question.